Good morning, friends. Welcome to MedWell Unscripted. I'm really excited. Wow, we are at the end of a 12-week stretch, Emily, of our series here.
I can't believe it.
I know, 12 weeks.
Always a bittersweet.
It is. And we have a great session to wrap up this series in store today, so we're really excited. First, some housekeeping. I do want to let you know that we are streaming live to multiple channels, and that technology can give us hiccups, and actually that's why we're running a little bit late. I had some hiccups with audio and camera this morning, so thanks for waiting for us. But if for whatever reason somebody bumps off, we'll be back on to finish this segment. So please do stick with us, and also drop some questions and say hello if you're here live in the chat. If you are catching the replay, feel free to leave us a comment or a question after. We'll be sure to get back to you. And MedWell Unscripted is in partnership with DocMJ. We offer medical cannabis certifications to friends in multiple states. We're really excited. We have Massachusetts, Florida, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Texas, and did I miss one? I feel like I just missed one. Did I miss one, Emily?
No, I think you got them.
I got them all. We're really excited to be able to offer a great educational series on the power of medicinal cannabis and bring in these wonderful guests. I have my partner in crime, Emily Waxman, our Director of Community Outreach. And today we're going to be talking with Dawn Marie Steenstra. She is a nurse and has a vast amount of experience. And we're going to be talking about an integrative approach to wellness and cannabis, and really talk a little bit more about seniors living their best life. So we have a great session in store, and we're going to first, good morning, ladies. I'm kind of like coffee setting in here. How is everybody today?
All good.
Good. All right, so let's start with you, Emily. What are you up to? I know you're out in the community today, this afternoon. So what have you been up to?
I am, yes. I love being able to go see our dispensary partners. It's always a pleasure to be able to celebrate with them. So they will be having a big party at Rev Clinics in Somerville today. So certainly stop by, and I will be there, and always looking to speak to folks about obtaining their medical card or renewing your medical card. Certainly, we want to make sure that you remain a patient in the program here in Massachusetts. So definitely stop by. I believe the hours of the party are 4 to 8. And again, that is Rev Clinics in Somerville. And big party with them today. And they have lots of fun things in store for everyone that drops in. So certainly make sure that, you can come over there and stop in and see what all the fun is about. And I am certainly out and about in the community. I was at a wonderful veterans conference this week in Hyannis. Certainly a pleasure being able to speak to our veterans and talk to them about the benefits of obtaining a medical card, and what some products out there that could be helpful for them. And always an absolute pleasure. So very busy stuff happening, and was very excited about our last Unscripted today. I could not wait to be able to connect with Dawn and, listen to all of her wealth of knowledge she's going to be bringing with her this morning.
Awesome. And so I will say that Bobby Bangers, who is a local favorite in Somerville, will be there tonight at the
party. Yes, we certainly don't want to miss him being the DJ today. So absolutely.
Awesome. And then one last thing, my friends, I dropped our website at medwellhealth.net into the chat here. We actually have some exciting news that we've been sharing. We have extended hours, and we have telehealth available Monday through Friday, 8 to 8 p.m. And we have longer weekends hours, and we are open on Sundays now. And our new rate for certifications is $129. So if you are a new patient to the program, or you are looking to recertify, definitely stop by our website. And without further ado, let's get started with today's session. So today, again, my friends, we're talking about an integrative approach to wellness and cannabis, and we're talking with Dawn Marie Steenstra. She has she's a nurse, and she's a national speaker. She's an advocate for cannabis. She owns Entourage Consulting, and her team have a very holistic approach to wellness with Integrative to promote quality of life. So for living our best life, my friends. And today we're going to talk about her work with dispensaries, because she actually works for, she has an interesting role in Maryland that she does. And welcome, Dawn. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for having me on this show. It's great. We've got so much going on in Maryland. It's absolutely crazy right now. So I'm very excited. Sorry, I'm missing your party.
Yes,
I know,
yes,
I'm sorry,
yes,
you are
yes.
too, Dawn. I would love to be able to hang out with you. I'll have to come down to Maryland.
Yeah.
So Dawn, my intro did not do you justice in terms of all of the experience that you bring to the table with us today. Why don't you share a little bit about yourself?
Okay. So my name is Dawn Marie Steenstra. I am one of the first cannabis nurses in the country, about a decade worth of experience. I've actually been taking care of the elderly since I was about 19 years old, from the age of 19 up until, 2002. I had my own assisted living in my home, where I was taking care of ex-psych patients from a psych hospital that was closing down back in the 1980s. So I did that. I took care of elderly ladies from that hospital for 21 years. And God, do I wish I'd had cannabis formulations back then. Now that we know how much, cannabis is helping with Alzheimer's and dementia and all other kinds of mental health issues, it would have been a boon. And I could have, really done a lot more work with my people. So after that, I went through a divorce and all that, and I met my husband to be, and he took me to a Patients Out of Time conference right out after I had been through breast cancer. So needless to say, I fell into cannabis quite by accident. I had had chronic pain issues, and I'd been taking a lot of medications, narcotics, benzodiazepines, all kinds of different medications. I'd worked with the elderly in nursing homes, and I saw the vast amount of polypharmacy that was going on, giving patients 10 pills crushed up in applesauce before they even eat, and then they expect them to actually have an appetite. It just really frustrated me. So when this came into my life, I was thinking, my goodness, maybe I can help people more utilizing this, herb that's been around forever, as opposed to, doing the medication route and just keeping people just sick enough, in the nursing home environment to keep the wheels rolling of healthcare there so they could get their reimbursements. So that's how I came into cannabis. And since then, I actually lobbied and worked in our medical cannabis program in Maryland. I went to Americans for Safe Access and learned how to be an effective advocate. And I lobbied, I wrote letters, and I actually had cannabis nurses considered as clinical directors. We have clinical directors in all of our dispensaries. And what we do is we help patients navigate all the hundreds of products we have and determine what ratio of medicine and what terpenes and things like that might do the best in helping them with their conditions. So that's what I do now. And I actually was able to start my own company doing that. And I take care of about 15 dispensaries right now in the Maryland space. So I'm very excited. I've worked with hundreds of patients. All I want to do is help, the elderly, being that, I just turned 60 this year. So I'm right up there in the in the category. So that's where I am right now.
Sorry, I was muted. I didn't realize. So congratulations on 60. Emily and I just made it to the Fab 50 Club. So.
Enjoy it.
Milestone year.
We will, for sure.
So that's amazing. I first of all, I can't even imagine having an assisted living program in your home. So that must have been a very humbling and interesting experience. And I can only imagine all of the, I think one of the things is that, especially I think you mentioned psych. So like from a mental illness capacity, the amount of pharmaceuticals that could be avoided with the use of medical cannabis. So that's amazing. And wow, thank you for opening your heart to people like that. That's awesome. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the clinical director piece that you're doing and facilitating, because I think that's as the first cannabis nurse and all of your experience, I think it's really important. And obviously, friends, just so you know, all states are a little bit different in kind of how the certification process works, and how if you're meeting with a nurse practitioner, a doctor, a pharmacist here in Connecticut. So talk to us a little bit about your role that you do there.
Well, it's funny because back in the beginning, if you all recall, like a decade ago, we had a lot of physicians that were, totally against really learning about cannabis and how it worked.
Yes.
So, what I did 10 years ago when I came into the cannabis nursing space, we had at that Patient Top Time conference I told you about, Mary Lynn Mathry gathered about 36 of us together at lunch and told us, if we don't become a nursing organization, nobody else will. So that's what we did back then. But I was out there as a new cannabis advocate, actually teaching every doctor I knew, every nurse group I knew about what I was learning. So that kind of evolved into what I do now. When I learned how to advocate, our program in Maryland was just starting to get teeth and just starting to talk about it. So I was writing into the commission and saying, we need to do this, we need to do that, educating people as fast as I could. I actually formed a group that we called We Can, like nobody else will, so we can, of professionals, nurses, professor. We had a professor. We had, and right before it kind of disbanded when our program opened, we had about 82 professionals who were actually working to educate the public, to get them prepared for what was happening. And now, we're even preparing even more because Maryland is going adult use as of July 1st. So right now we are in crunch mode. And, my goal is to teach patients how to utilize cannabis in the most beneficial way for their particular conditions. So that's what I do now. Where I had actually worked for a little while. I had my own dispensary in Maryland. My husband and I and a group we were working with, we actually won a license in Maryland. We opened our dispensary, and I immediately started counseling with retirement communities, senior centers. And I tell you honestly, the seniors are the most thoughtful population of every cannabis population I've taught, because they know, they know that something is wrong with our current system. They know there's something wrong with all the medications that they're being given. And what I find in my nursing practice after all these years is that a lot of times, because of insurance, doctors don't collaborate anymore. And a patient will to multiple physicians and they won't collaborate about medication or anything. And what happens is they'll be put on, like, say, an antidepressant. The antidepressant doesn't work well for them. So instead of stopping that and starting another one, they'll stack something on top of that. And then they'll stack something else for the side effects of that. And before you know it, you're taking 6 medications for depression where the first one never worked to begin with. So when I did community health, and when I did nursing home work, I would get in there and just pull apart all of the medication plans and talk to the various doctors about, well, if they're on this, do they really need to be on this? And I would, work with the doctors in getting people's medications down as far as we could back then. And now that I find cannabis works for so many different conditions, handles so many different symptomology, and truly that's what pharmaceuticals do. It's not as if pharmaceuticals cure anything. They just basically block out the symptoms just like cannabis does. So to me, it's a very good transitional thing to do. And had I known about cannabis when I was going through cancer, I would have definitely utilized cannabis instead of a lot of the other drugs that they had put me on. I mean, since then, I've actually been able to wean off of all my narcotics, all of my benzos, all of my muscle relaxers that I was taking for 18 years for pain management, a bad car accident that I was in years ago. I had to get I did get a triple fusion in my neck, and my lower back is still messed up. So I was on pain medication for years and had all kinds of procedures done where, invasive procedures, needles and shots and drugs, and nothing was taking care of the pain. But my husband, who is Eric Steenstra, he worked with the hemp industry for about 25 years. He got worried about me being addicted to all the pharmaceuticals. So he said, Dawn, doing this cannabis nursing, why don't you put your money where your mouth is, and try this full spectrum hemp, formulation that we have that we know is good and produce GMP and organic and full spectrum. And lo and behold, I'll tell you what, it took me about 2 weeks. And I realized, wait a minute, I'm really onto something here. And I was able to fully wean off of everything I was taking. The benzodiazepines, I'll warn everybody, were the hardest to get off of. And once in a while, if I need it, I'll still ask my doctor for it. But I haven't been on any medications besides full spectrum hemp derived CBD product and a THC gummy to sleep at night. And it covers about 8 different drugs.
Wow, that's amazing.
I'm totally floored by all this. And if I can do that for myself, I feel that, it's good to help guide other people in at least trying it. It doesn't work for everybody because, as we know, everybody has their own individual unique endocannabinoid system, much like your fingerprint or your blood type. So it takes a little bit of experimentation. But if you journal and pay attention to what your body's doing and give yourself some grace and time, I can guarantee you cannabis can help in some way, shape, or form with almost any sort of disorder going on, especially with the elderly, especially with menopausal women like myself. So it's just been the most miraculous thing I've ever seen in my life. So my goal is to teach everybody that I can how to utilize it safely, properly, and to save as much money as they can because it can get expensive. Because of the fact that it's Schedule 1, it's not covered by any insurance yet. So.
Right.
So, Dawn, I just love everything you just said. I have to ask you though, because I do run into this when I'm speaking to our senior friends that I just adore speaking with, because I love that, they've seen such a progression with where cannabis was, for in the 60s and the 70s, and now for them to see it where it is today. I love listening to their thought process on it, but I do find that, because they are in that mindset of with the stigma of cannabis still, I'm curious what, you say to them to help them maybe get over that stigma, because I'd love to be able to steal that for when I'm speaking to them down the road about it.
Well, honestly, what I usually do when I go to speak to a senior group is I'll take a basic 101 PowerPoint with me. And when I go over the history of how it became, this prohibited, plant, most people don't even know how it became prohibited to begin with. And once they find out, they're like, oh, wait a minute, just like I did. I had no idea. I mean, I honestly had smoked cannabis as a teenager a few times. And I knew that it worked as an anti-anxiety agent better than, my mother's Valium that I used to steal when I was young, just to calm me down. So I knew instinctively there was something positive about this plant. But of course, I raised my kids during the say no to drugs. So that's why it was prohibited. I'm like, this is God's plant. This is put in the earth and it's right there for us. How dare, a government or anybody else tell us you can't have it? It just makes no sense to me. No logical sense in my head. So what I usually tell people, when I'm speaking to them is this is prohibited totally under the wrong pretense. And if it was something that would kill people, I mean, such as, a lot of these pharmaceuticals that we have that are underground and coming out, fentanyl is everywhere now. And people in pain, are desperate. I was desperate. I knew anything to get me out of pain, I would do. So, I can help people fall into that trap. Plus, keep in mind that the generation before me, the doctor in the white coat was the ultimate authority.
Yeah.
So, once they realized that, I don't look like a stoner, all those preconceived notions that people have about people that do cannabis, are kind of dropped when I go and give a talk. Cause I'll tell them flat out, do I look high to you? I have cannabis in my system 24 hours a day. Now, right now I've got a little bit of watery eyes because I have allergies, but truly, they all kind of laugh. And then the next thing you know, they're asking for samples. One time it was hilarious. One time it was like a have you ever seen a televised like Baptist revival? Okay, imagine this scenario. I'm with a bunch of, I'm in a retirement community talking to about, I don't know, 70 people, and I happen to have a jar of some cream, cream of CBD cream that I had gotten, for some arthritis in my wrist and stuff. And they asked me if I had a sample, and at the time I had the cream in my purse. So I'm like, well, as a matter of fact, I do. So I pulled out this thing and I got a little tiny spoon, and a bunch of ladies wanted to try it. Well, the next thing you know, they're walking around saying, "Oh my God, I can dance now. I can go on a cruise now. I can do this." And I mean, everybody came up, that whole jar was gone in a matter of like 10 minutes. And they're walking around like, this is miraculous. This is amazing. And, the funny thing is that there's a tad bit of, what would you call it? Placebo effect. When people are all excited about something, people fall into that category and believe. However, I will tell you that your mind is a very powerful thing. Yeah. So there is, a bit of power to the placebo effect, at least temporarily. But the fact that this cream had some kind of positive effect on about 15 days time just blew my mind, because they were all excited and they wanted to order the stuff and everything else. I'm like, look, I'm not a salesperson. I'm just here to educate you. And I can tell you safe companies to go to on the internet, because as you know, there are thousands and thousands of CBD companies.
For sure.
I guide people in what I have a cannabis nurse colleague named Jana Champagne. And Jana has done a lot of work in the cannabis space as a cannabis nurse. And she also teaches at Pacific College, other nurses. But she came up with a criteria called the flow criteria when you're looking at things online. So my first educational thing I'll tell seniors right now is look for the flow criteria. The flow criteria for a product in the internet space is F is for flower derived, which means you want the entire flower in your medication formulation. L means lab tested. You want to make sure you can get a hold of a lab test, or what we call a certificate of analysis. And inside of that certificate of analysis, you'll find all the information as far as what is tested for that particular formulation. O is for organic. You always kind of want to go towards organically grown flower, because it's usually the safest, not used, no pesticides are used, or any kind of adverse type of organic, or any kind of adverse type of chemicals on your medicine or on your flower. And W means whole plant. Whole plant, I cannot stress that enough. With the elderly, we have so many different things going on. On top of that, our metabolism is changing. It's always changing, especially once you get over 50, ladies. I hate to break it to you, but metabolism changes, and you have to be prepared for this. Whole plant cannabis has over 400 chemicals in it. Pharmaceuticals have one, usually. Sometimes you'll get a couple of different chemicals put together in a formulation, but it's not whole plant. To me, the plant was put here whole for a reason, okay? And taking everything apart and doing one chemical at a time will help certain conditions. But if you take whole plant, it deals with the body holistically, the entire body at one time. So whatever you use, the cannabis will target that, okay? And then it will let go of the rest, and you'll eventually excrete it. So, it's a great place to be. It really is. I really wish I'd known about this 30 years ago.
And I think our friend Leslie is validating that. She's saying that when she went in for her medical card, there was a sample of cream, and she rubbed it on the back of her hand. At first, nothing. And when she was new to medical, and then figured it was all hype. By the time the signing up and interview was over, my hand felt wonderful. I like CBDs.
It's an amazing chemical. It really is. But it's only one chemical in cannabis. Right. It's only one. And that one chemical does some amazing things we found. But I'm a true believer that anytime you take a single chemical out and then concentrate it to the umpteenth degree, eventually there's going to be harm, because that isn't the way the plant was made to be utilized. So, CBD formulations are great, but make sure it has some whole plant in it. not just CBD. Although CBD by itself topically works very well.
Well, and I think that leads us into a question about kind of talking about dosing in seniors, right? Because like Leslie's saying, I put it on and nothing happened at first, and I think that sometimes, it can happen with anyone, no matter what age you are. Like we've talked about edibles before, and then people take another edible and another edible. And so, and then an hour later, it's not good. So let's talk about kind of, Dawn, it's amazing. I love the flow analogy. I think that's super interesting. And I have to, when we're done here today, get some more information aware so we can I'd love to write a blog post about something like that for our audience, because I think that would be super helpful. Let's talk kind of about seniors and dosing, because I know that you have all age demographics, but like typical that boomer generation, right? So there's that stigma, there's there's a stigma, but then you have the people that were using recreational,
right,
medicinal cannabis, but not really recognizing, I think, that how it helped in some of their wellness. And in Massachusetts, we actually have a lot of qualifying conditions that it can help. So can you talk a little bit about dosing?
Well, I find that with dosing, most of my seniors that I deal with, we have 3 different types of seniors, and I think this is probably 3 different types of patients in general. We have patients that utilize cannabis back in the day. I have to warn them that the cannabis we have today is nothing like what you're used to from back in the day. Our cannabis is probably 2 to 5 to 10 times stronger in THC content than anything you had back then. So I tell people, go for the lowest THC if you want to try flower first. Okay. Mm-hmm. The second type of person is the person that is curious, but not quite so sure, and absolutely petrified of getting high because they have no idea what high means. High to an elderly person or an older person equates loss of control. That generation is very much into control. You don't lose control. So I have to usually speak about what high means, what it feels like, that it's not something to be afraid of. It's actually kind of like a target of what you would look at as far as if a cannabis is actually working, if the THC is actually, to a certain level where you can feel it in your head. And then you've got people that are more on the recreational side. As far as dosing goes, most people are petrified of that high, who over the age of 60. And I usually start a lot of the conditions that we can treat with the elderly, starting with a high CBD full spectrum hemp formulation, usually helps a lot of things just globally. With as long as it's whole flower and full spectrum, it does handle a lot of global problems. So what I'll do is I tell them, what does it say on the package? I've found that if you start with 5 milligrams, usually somebody will give up because they don't feel anything. They don't notice any difference. So I'll start somebody maybe on 20 milligrams of a high full spectrum CBD product. Now, the thing that we're very careful with on that, once they take the CBD or a full spectrum product and they notice that there's a difference in their condition, and they finally get brave enough that cannabis is not going to hurt them, cannabis is not going to cause a loss of control, then we can start experimenting with adding a little bit more THC in, a little bit at a time. And we layer that on top of that, because that way they'll get the full benefit of the full spectrum CBD. And then we bring in the THC. Sometimes, because I find that in the dispensaries, what they're doing is they're kind of making a lot of pseudo pharmaceuticals, where they'll take and extract the entire plant, take apart every molecule, and then and terpene and everything else, and then they'll put it back together in a formulation that's, their formulation, but it doesn't have the full spectrum of the whole plant in it. It just has X amount of THC, X amount of CBD, X amount of CBC. They pick and choose the molecules that they add back together. Mm-hmm. And these work, for whatever condition they're advertised as. But I think that a full whole plant spectrum is so much more beneficial to this particular age bracket. because most people who are older are not looking to get high. They're not looking to relax and take it easy. They're looking to actually treat something.
Yeah.
So to me, if you want to hit the global, you go with a full spectrum hemp-derived CBD product, and then you layer that THC in. Now, the way I determine how to layer THC in, they can either go to a dispensary and get microdosing tablets or microdosing, liquid where they can do 1 milligram at a time. But prescription Marinol, do you know what prescription Marinol is?
No.
Prescription Marinol is fully synthesized pure THC in a capsule with sesame oil that's been on the market pharmaceutically since the 1980s. So we have had isolate THC since the 1980s that you can get by prescription. And the prescription dosages of that are 2.5, 5, and 10. So I figure if they've done the studies to have that pharmaceutical available, then 2.5 is a pretty decent bracket to somebody to try for the first time.
Yeah.
I think with the elderly, it could be a bit high, but it's been approved, pharmaceutically to start at 2.5 with Marinol straight up. So usually I'll say, go ahead, you can start with 1 milligram or 2.5, and then we go from there, because most gummies, most edibles are made in 10 milligram packages or 10 milligram doses. So I will instruct somebody to cut that gummy in quarters, or cut it even smaller than that in order to try it a little bit at a time. Now, you had mentioned about people layering things or taking too many at one time. I tell them straight up 2 hours. You wait at least 2 hours because our metabolism is slowing down. We don't know any kind of, and we also check their medications as well. I have to put that in there too. I always, when I do a consult with an older person or anybody that has comorbid conditions or more than one condition, I usually go over all their medications to make sure there's nothing that might potentiate or make the THC stronger or make the drug stronger. We have certain medications we have to be very mindful of. So, like Coumadin, blood thinners, things of that sort. So I always check medications before I give any kind of dosing. All right. But generally speaking, I teach people how to layer it carefully, journal everything, write everything down that you feel, write everything down, whether you like it or not, because those symptoms or those effects that you feel, if you write them down and I know what you're taking, I can adjust, the terpene cannabinoid profile or whatever to either mitigate symptoms you don't want or to make things stronger if you're not getting the effect that you want. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It does.
It does. Yeah.
So where are you spending your advocacy work these days?
Mainly just speaking. I go out and I speak at conferences. I'm also with a group now in Maryland. As I said, in Maryland and PA, we do have clinical directors expected to work with every dispensary to help patients out. And with legalization coming and adult use, I think there are a lot of people that have wanted to try cannabis, but just didn't want to get on a state list. So I think that there's going to be a lot more patients coming in, a lot more people wanting to utilize cannabis for health conditions, and they need to learn about ratioed medicine, how to balance that CBD and THC and not just go whole hog or concentrate or a 50 milligram gummy or whatever. Because if you take too much, it will not be pleasant.
Right.
That's true.
Very true.
And tell us a little bit about your consulting agency, your mission there and what you're up to.
Okay, well, the consulting agency is basically my tool for working with my dispensaries. Patients are referred to me through the dispensary. Usually they've hit a wall with their condition. They're looking to work with a lot of conditions that they have, because bud tenders are only taught basically for sales purposes.
Right.
They don't have any clinical knowledge whatsoever. Now, mind you, a lot of people who are trained under, say, Healer with Dustin and Sulak have a good amount of knowledge to be able to look at something and tell whether or not they need a clinical director. But I think, with legalization coming, there are patients within that recreational base that are going to need that extra help as well. So they're referred to my site. They do a consult sheet that I have where I ask for their medications. I ask for, their conditions they want to treat, how they want to go about things. And then we have a call for about an hour where I do a face-to-face over Zoom, and we discuss, what they want to do, how they want to approach it. And then I give them my suggestions as far as what I know from my knowledge base to help them get started.
Awesome. So where's the best way for people to connect with you?
The best way to connect with me is through my website. You can go to www.entourageconsulting.net. It is .net. Don't forget that. I also, Dawn Marie at entourageconsulting.net. You can get a hold of me personally. And, I love to hear from patients. I am probably going to have to open up an individual consult thing because the consults right now, dispensaries pay me to be on call for them. So any consult that comes through my site is a free service for those dispensaries. So it doesn't cost anything. You get a good grip on what you're doing. And, I've been doing this for many years. So, I think, most people I can help. And if I can't help them, because I've been in the industry so long, I can call Bonnie Goldstein to help me if I have an autistic case or something that's beyond my capacity. I have many doctors that I work with that I can refer to. So if I can't help, I have plenty of people that I can call on to help instead.
Awesome. Awesome.
Wonderful.
Well, Dawn, thank you so much for all that you're doing in the industry to make a difference. And I love the model that they have in Maryland and having you as being able to bring in a clinical director with all your experience. What an amazing thing. Hopefully more states take from that lead because that's amazing. I know, like I said, every state is different. Yep.
Okay, I have one more thing real quick. I am part of the group, and I helped find a group called the National Clinical Directors Consortium. We in Maryland are trying to get other states to adopt this model because we think that it works and it works well. But I think that every dispensary should have a clinical person available to help patients in this way. So the National Clinical Director Consortium is a tool that we're using to try to get all these people together as states come on and to get other cannabis nurses to advocate for this in their state. So that's another way to get a hold of other clinical directors.
Awesome. Awesome. And I did post the link here for you. So, well, Dawn Marie, thank you so much for your time today and all of your insight. And thank you, Emily, as well. And thank you to our friends watching, catching us live, catching us the replay. It's been a great 12-week series. We're going to take some time for the summer and we'll be back probably the end of August, early September with a new topic and a new series, but definitely stop by our site at benwellhealth.net. Also, please feel free to jump on the chat here. There's links to the National Director Consortium as well as Entourage Consulting and ways to find Dawn Marie. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day. And thanks again, ladies.
Dawn, thank you so much. Thank you.